right.
So let's talk a little bit. Tom, have you seen what's happening in Minnesota? Have you seen the riots up there that's happening because that guy got murdered?
Yeah, I actually want to point something out. So one thing the Times did that I thought was really good is they didn't say riots, and I don't know. I noticed this shift in language. They called it destructive protests.
Oh,
and I liked that, right? Because like riot is a thing, right? Like riot has a connotation, and I think rightfully so. Like a riot, like my sports team won the internet and I flipped over a car. That's a riot.
Right,
Like you're all
right.
assholes. Like you idiots ought to be all rounded up and thrown in the garbage because you can't even understand how to be happy without setting a fire. That's ridiculous. But I like that they still labeled them protests. Did you watch the fucking video of that guy?
yeah, George Floyd, his name is. So yeah, George Floyd was.
So did you watch the video of George Floyd being murdered by that cop?
Yes.
That is a goddamned atrocity.
It's a fucking murder. I mean, you're literally watching like a snuff film.
You watch that man die. And like before he dies, he's like, I would have preferred not to be dying. Like he's like saying out loud, holy fucking shit, I can't breathe. Guys, I really can't breathe. And you got all these bystanders there that are like, hey, even when he passes out, they're like, could you check for a pulse? They never bother to check for a pulse.
Don't even bother. Don't even bother.
The callous indifference to the well-being of that guy, like it was upsetting.
Yeah.
Like it was fucking upsetting to watch.
Yeah, and the thing is that every time a person of color dies in this country or is murdered by the police or is murdered on the street by some randos who fucking just think that they need to shoot somebody that day, you know, they immediately try to make it look like that person was a bad guy. Right. So there are always immediately these releases of their police record and, you know, how bad they were and, oh, they're super dangerous and they deserved it. Because you're basically what you're doing is you're trying to excuse it by saying they deserved everything they fucking got. So take it. Well, in this case, and I didn't get a chance to really follow up on it, but I saw today somebody posted a picture of someone holding the bulleted list of the guy who murdered George Floyd. Is that his name? George Floyd? I think I might have said it earlier. Yeah.
Yep.
They murdered him, and they showed a list of all the things that this guy has done in the past, as he's broken the rules and used excessive force in the past. And you're just like, and that's
he was involved in 2 police shootings.
Yeah.
2 shootings in like 9 years in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
How fucking dangerous can Minneapolis be? That's Canada Junior. I'm sorry. There's 250,000 people in Minneapolis. It's Diet Canada.
Yeah.
Everybody's apologizing if they walk into the same fucking elevator.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Fucking ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, the idea that guy and one tweet I saw, which was, we should release those things with the same fervor that we do when the other side wants to release this portrait of the person who was murdered as a bad person. Instead, let's release the other thing, which shows that this guy has a history of being a fucking asshole, violent fuck. That is basically in charge of whether or not you live or die. He has that ability every moment of the day. He walks around with a weapon that can kill you with 1 calorie of energy. It takes 1 calorie of energy to murder you. And he walks around with that power every day, and we don't question that. We think, oh, that's fine. Oh, that person should have been doing something differently because they deserved it. It's unreal.
The other thing, too, about the cops, and that video really shows it, is like, that guy was busy killing George Floyd while other people stood around protecting him while he did it. And that's some next level awful shit. Like that's that thin blue line that isn't so fucking thin, right?
Yeah.
Like if you watch that video, there was the other officer in the video who stood there doing crowd control.
Yeah.
Keeping people back while his buddy behind him is busy murdering George Floyd.
Yeah.
Like, what the actual fuck is going on? Like, none of that. Just fucking 100% none of that. Did you see that the UN came out condemning the U.S. for its its police brutality
As well
and the
they
murder.
should. As well they should. Absolutely.
God damn. We are. When are we going to acknowledge that we're? I know this is supposed to be funny, and I'm sorry, but like, and we'll get. But like, when are we going to acknowledge that we're at a goddamn crisis point with this shit?
Yeah.
Like, at what point are we going to say like our cops do not de-escalate?
Yeah.
There's no world where anybody should feel safer because a cop is in the room.
That
is a goddamn like that is a ridiculous statement. The idea that like a cop enters the room and you feel safer, that's absurd. Nobody feels safer. Nobody.
I'll tell you this. I have a guy, a friend of mine in Canada. He's a police officer in Calgary. And he trains, his job is to train other police officers. And I may have mentioned this on the show before, but he plays videos of interactions with the police in the United States as training to his police officers on what not to do. He literally plays those videos to show them, to say, yeah, this isn't how, don't ever do this. What he's doing, don't ever do this. And I know they have different laws up there and different ways, which again, maybe we should be a little more like Canada in a lot of ways that we look at the way you look at how they, not only how they handle their police handle people, but also how they handle guns and other things. We should probably be a little more like Canada. But genuinely, if you're using the interactions with our police force as a way to say, man, this is fucked up. Look at this. As almost as if it's like America's Funniest Home Videos or like a fucking nut shot video on the internet. That's what you're using it for.
Yeah. I'm at a place with the police where like I'm distrustful of anyone that even wants to join that organization. Why would anybody want to join a police organization as a citizen of the United States, knowing what we know about how that works, how that's trained, how they treat citizens, how like the epidemic of I can't think of the word, the epidemic of violence and like cover up that is part of that world. Who looks at that and says, that's what I want to do?
Oh,
that's like I have to think, to be perfectly honest, that like just joining that organization is not dissimilar to being like, I want to join the mafia. I want to be a made guy. I want to go out and I want to have power and I want to have prestige and I want to walk around the neighborhood and be a big swinging dick and I want to be able to act with relative impunity and wield power over a helpless populace.
Yeah.
I am really hard pressed to offer the benefit of the doubt at this point because like you have to join that organization intentionally.
Yeah.
And like we're at a place where like it happens time and time again in every town across all of America. It's not like, oh, LA's got like a bad culture. Okay, well, blame it on the bad culture of policing in LA because it's everywhere now.
Yeah.
Like the only thing that's changed is the goddamn technology. That's the only thing that has changed is now we see it. That's literally it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I don't know who said it. One of some famous person tweeted it this week, which was the violence hasn't changed. It's just now being recorded. And that's just true. It's just, people, the violence hasn't ramped up. It's always been there. The violence has always been there. We just, I never had to deal with police violence as a child. I never had to deal with the chance that I might be murdered because someone might fucking lean on my neck until I die. That would never occur to me. I just, because I've grown up with sort of ridiculous privilege when it comes to that stuff. So yeah, it's a fucking horrible situation up there. And I like that terminology. What was the terminology they used again? It was protest. What was it for the New York Times?
Destructive protest.
Destructive protest. I like that. I like that terminology. I think that's a good terminology.
Real quick, somebody in the chat, Lauren says, she disagrees. She says there are lots of police who get into it to help. They want to change things. I don't doubt that's true. I think that there probably are some people who get into police work for the right reasons. So I don't want to paint with the broadest possible brush. So, and I know that my statements did that. But I think at this point, that I'm unwilling to offer the benefit of the doubt without knowing somebody personally, because we've seen an epidemic of violent culture, and I do at this point have to wonder about people who look at a violence culture and say that's the job for me. You're either not paying attention, or you're doing it because you are interested in being a part of that culture. And in either direction, I'm nervous about that. I'm nervous if I were to be introduced to somebody and they were a cop, or a cop walks into a room or a restaurant that I'm in, I don't feel safer.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we should feel safer because they're there. I think we should not offer that automatic. Do you remember when you were a kid, like there was that like blanket advice, like, oh, if you're lost or whatever, ask a cop? Would you ask a cop for help?
I have a story. I'm sure I've told this on the air, where I ran into a police station as a child.
I do remember.
And the cops didn't do anything about it. I'll be very brief with the story, but the story is I was walking down the street. It was almost curfew. I was walking down the street, and these guys come out of a bar. I was on the main street in the city I lived in. These guys come out of a bar and start screaming at us, calling us douchebags, and they start running at us. And so we literally ran away from them. We had no idea why they were chasing us. We ran into the police station. When we ran into the police station, one of the guys comes in and is like, I saw you stealing from my friend's house. And none of us would stolen anything. And they were just screaming at us. And one of them grabbed my friend with a police officer literally standing right there, grabbed him, shook his finger in his face, and was shaking him. And the police officer did nothing. The police officer just watched it happen. And so, from that point, I'd always been very leery. I was like, oh, okay, well, they're not here for me. So I'm never going to assume that they're here for me. And so I've always been very leery about it. But yeah, I watched a guy basically abuse my friend and threaten him, literally threaten him, wave his finger in his face, say, if you come around my friend again or my crew, I will fucking kill you. Those are his exact words. And I remember as a kid seeing a grown man who's in his, probably 50s or whatever, threatening my 12-year-old friend, and with a police officer literally standing right there, does nothing about it, didn't do anything, didn't even lift a finger, just watched it happen. And so, that's always colored my view of the police anyway. Just watch it happen. Why would you just watch that happen? And we had nothing to do with anything. They just knew that kids maybe had burglarized something and thought we were those kids. So and so they did their own little vigilante work and tried to scare us. And they did. They scared the shit out of us.
And the cops let them do it.
The cops watched it happen.
The cops just stood there and let them do it.
The cops just watched it happen.
The thing is, like, I also want to be clear, like, I know that, like, as a fucking middle-class white guy, like, I'm not in real danger. Like, I always say that shit out. Like, I'm a fucking middle-class white guy living in the suburbs.
Yeah.
So, like, do I personally feel like, oh, my God, the cops are out to get me? No, I don't. But do I think that, like, they make it safer to be in the, like, I don't think, like, I'm as safe. If I'm at fucking Chipotle and there are no cops and then two cops walk in to get Chipotle, I'm less safe because two assholes with guns walked into that room. That is 100% true. It's just true.
Yeah.